and I want to welcome you to my new YouTube channel. It's going to be called Books and Boas with Ann Panning. And what I want to talk about is writing and reading, pretty much. And the Boas come in some way I'll have to tell you later. I have a lot of them. I'll be showing them every time I do one, but I'm planning to make the Boas be a way I rate the books I read and really love. So, you know, instead of 5 stars, it would get 5 Boas, etc., etc. Still figuring that out. So anyway, what I'm going to say, I'm going to introduce myself first, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my background as a writer, and then I'm going to talk about the current writing project I'm working on, and we'll see where it goes from there. I may talk about the current book I'm reading, but I want to keep these pretty good for time. All right, so I just want to say cheers to all you readers out there and writers. Happy Sunday afternoon. Okay, as way of my background, I currently live in Brockport, New York, it's a small town right on the Erie Canal, but it's a college town. And I teach at the college in town. I'm a creative writing professor, and I've been here for 23 years. We moved here, my husband and I, from Honolulu, Hawaii to here. So that was quite a big change. And I love it here. I love it here. I walk to my work. It's really wonderful. My original background is I grew up at a really small town in Minnesota called Arlington. And I also, I started out my life, we lived in a pig farm for a while. And then we moved into the trailer court. And then we moved into an old Victorian home from 1880 on Main Street in my small town of Arlington, Minnesota. And it was a great place to grow up for a writer, partially because there wasn't a lot going on, and I was always a huge reader, and that's really what got me going. I always loved to read, even though we had a tiny public library. And I also had some really good teachers. My English teachers were really great in high school, so they really turned me on to writing poetry and all these great things. In terms of my publications, I mean, I do have a website, annpanning.com. It's ANNEPANNING, all one word, .com. And it's a little outdated, but it has many of the links to my short published work. But to date, I have I've published 4 books. The first is The Price of Eggs, and these are a collection of short stories, and I wrote these quite a while ago when I was a young'un. This was published in 1992, probably before many of you were born. And then the next book is called Super American. I really love this cover. And this was published by University of Georgia, and it won the Flannery O'Connor Award for Short Fiction, which thrilled me to no end and makes me want to, and I had applied to that contest probably 5 or 6 times. So never give up, because I almost didn't send it that year because we were heading out of town, and I just happened to have a copy and I threw it in the mail. So that's what can happen. And the really one of my life's dream, the big thing that I'm happy about was this got reviewed in the New York Times favorably, and it got selected as a New York Times Editor's Choice. And this book was published in 2007. And then I moved to my first novel, which, yes, is called Butter. Actually, that's when I started wearing the boas. I thought butter was such a humble, you know, Midwestern-y thing. My grandfather worked in a creamery and made butter, and we all ate butter like it was going out of style. So when I went to do my readings for Butter, I ended up wanting to like fancy it up and sexy it up somehow. So I bought a yellow boa and wore it to all my readings. And then that just sort of became a thing. This was published in 2012. And then my last book, my 4th book and most recent, is called Dragonfly Notes on Distance and Loss. And this book is a memoir. So that was a totally different genre for me. It was published in 2018, and it kind of talks about The distance part is, I moved away from my hometown and my state and lived all over the place, everywhere across the world, even Hawaii, the Philippines, Vietnam. And, my whole family was in Minnesota. So there's the distance. And then the loss pertains to my mother, who died in a sort of routine procedure that should not have happened. And it's actually about a lot of different things. So that is my fourth and final book, or not final, published in 2018. And the current book I'm working on is called, the current book I'm working on is also a memoir. And in some ways, I see it as a companion to this one. This one was really focused on my mom and my relationship with her and her relationship with my father. This next book, I think of it as how Maxine Hong Kingston did it, who wrote these great books, The Woman Warrior, A Girlhood Among Ghosts, which was sort of about her mother and her female side of the family. And then Chinamen, which was sort of about her father and the history of males in her family. So my next book, I'm about 120 pages deep in it, is called Bootleg Barber, A Daughter's Memoir. And the reason for bootleg is because my dad was an alcoholic and had a lot of trouble with various addictions. And barber was that he was a barber for much of his career. And I found that really fascinating. And I have his old barber chair actually sitting in my living room downstairs. So anyway, one of the things I want to always talk about sort of a current struggle with writing, because I think we all go through that. The thing that's giving me trouble in this book is obviously a few things, but one is that Lucy Danziger, she's a memoirist, and she wrote this book called Negative Space that's coming out. And she kept saying her father was an addict and an artist. And in this Rumpus article I read about her, she kept saying, well, I'm writing this book about my dad sort of as a manifesto or whatever about his life and his art and sharing his stuff and then talking about his addiction. And I thought, that's kind of like what I'm trying to do. But then she went on to say the more she wrote on the book, she realized it was about her and her relationship with her father and men, I think. And I haven't read the whole book because it's not out yet. And then her awareness was this. That's what really hit me, and I wrote this down. She said, you can't write a memoir about someone else. The memoir has to be about you and your response to it, and how, to that person and relationship, and how what you've learned or gone through can somehow be made to be somehow universal to other readers. So that really hit me. I'm like, okay, this is not about my dad. I have all of his, his old barber equipment and all this cool stuff. And, he was, as many addicts, was a real character. But to just present information about him isn't a great book for me to write, because first of all, he and I were not super close. And second of all, he died in 2010. So I can't ask him anything. My mother died. I can't ask her anything. So really, this is me sort of piecing together the mystery of who he was, how did he get to become an addict, what were his dreams and hopes, and why did so many things stand in his way, including himself. But I'm now going back and thinking about how I can add, and more put my reactions into here. The book was originally titled, I shouldn't call it a book. The manuscript was originally titled Serial Girlfriend, which, and I spell that S-E-R-I-A-L, Serial Girlfriend. And I think that was because, I've always had a boyfriend ever since I was like 14, and another, any other one, and another one, and another one. And I just kept kind of falling into the lives of men who often were not good to me or good for me or me for them, etc. Again, I'm not out here to blame, and that's why that book is still under construction. As many of you went through, also, COVID happened. And there I was in the middle, like about 120 pages into this book. Who could think? Who could concentrate? My son was leaving for college. I had to have 3 surgeries. Everything was just turned upside down, and it still is, obviously. But that really stopped me in my tracks. And then when I went back now, when things are sort of settled down, I went back and have been working on it this semester. I'm on leave. I found that it was really hard because the whole world has changed, and I have changed physically, mentally, emotionally. Everything still feels entirely uncertain. So how do I go back and pick that up where I left off? So that is the puzzle of my book, and that's some of what I want to talk about before we, in these podcasts. I'm sorry, in these videos. So I'm going to leave it at that. Next time I'm going to talk about the last book I just read, which was amazing, and I would give it a 5 Boa review. But I want to keep these close to 10 minutes because I know my attention span is horrible. So I'm going to leave you with that, and all I ask is cheers, and please subscribe to this channel if you would, and share it with other people you think might be interested. Make comments or links, whatever you can do. It's a new venture for me, and I want to really, I want to get out there in a different way as a writer. So I think this will be really useful. So that's it from Rockport, New York. It is Sunday, April 25th, 2021, and well, it's almost 5 o'clock, so it's happy hour. Cheers.